Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Redcat RDS series. In this episode, we'll begin preparations for our annual Potluck Matsuri by building a brand new dedicated body. We'll then install the new Redcat skeletonized transmission case and finish up today's episode installing a Rhino Racing Shark DDSS front end into our Project RDS. Stay tuned. Episode 8 starts in 3, 2, 1. Back in March, with our Potluck Matsuri quickly approaching, I took to the internet in hopes of finding some inspiration to help me finish this Yokomo JZX100 body. It wasn't long before the ideas started bubbling, and I took to the clear shell with my X-Acto blade in hand, ready to create my next masterpiece. I began with the basics, cutting out my shell and fitting my over-fender set. I also spent extra time fine-tuning the front bumper fitment into my over-fenders, ensuring these would appear to have been included from factory with the body. Next, I chose to install one of the SRC rear cooler sets, so here I was tackling the install of that. First marking out my lines, then fitting, drilling, and finally test fitting. Pleased with the outcome, it was time to move on to the wing. I used some of these easy-made, low-rise spoiler stays I had in a collection. I've been collecting dust, more or less. So it was time to use them. I was really pleased, teamed up with this Yokomo fin set, how aggressive the spoiler looked on the car. Excited by the progress, I also installed the mirrors, bringing this body one step closer to completion. Did you notice this doodle in the last shot? Armed with that, I went to my computer and created a 3D print file that I knocked out in under an hour. Love that detail. Next, it was time to add some more realistic detail to the front, including this blast pipe and version 2 realistic intercooler from SRC. Mount it up with some screws to make sure everything stays nice and sturdy. Unfortunately, I also had about 19 simultaneous projects going on in preparation for Matsuri, so it was slow going, but I stayed steady and did little bits of detail every night, and slowly but surely it began to come together. Looking at lots of the new kits that have these vent lights, I had to make a set for myself. I was really pleased how clean they came out using stickers as a template. But just a vent wasn't gonna be enough, it needed to be custom. So out comes these 3D printed light bezels, and I wrap some flexible LEDs around them. Once illuminated, they should look pretty trick. Just so the tail lights didn't feel left out, in went some strip LEDs. With fabrication complete, it was time to pick a livery. And while it was a hard decision, I think we nailed it. In keeping with the build theme of going a little extra, a basic paint job just couldn't do justice to all of our hard work in the prep stage. I opted to experiment and use a pre-mixed can of micro flake from Tropical Glitz. The strawberry daiquiri flake dust coating on the body before finishing with a Mission Models red really brought the red to life and locked in what would be a fantastic looking shell both inside under fluorescent light and outside under the sun. I also chose the worst moment to try and experiment with some of this waterslide decal graphic. My goodness, did the carbon weave look so good on this car. I love the scale of the weave. It's one of the most scale things I've seen for carbon on these cars so far. However, it was one of the most fragile things I've ever dealt with on an RC lid and was next to impossible to get it to sit just right. So for now, this experiment will be considered a failure, But in the future, I'm really hoping that something like this comes our way. The final vision was coming more and more to life as every sticker was stuck. Nothing like putting the body on the chassis for the first time and seeing that fitment. And as the personalization stage began, this thing was becoming cooler and cooler by the second. I was looking so forward to getting to drive this thing and bang some doors with all of our friends coming to visit from out of state. The Action RC bodyline sets in different thicknesses allowed me to really finish off the look of the car and bring everything together. Now all that was left was some official photos before we scratch it up and have some fun. Our scale garage backdrop for photos is definitely my favorite place to take these finished photos now. Just looks so good sitting there on the bench top. Really loved how this body turned out, and I can't wait to see it at the Potluck Matsuri. With the body complete, we'll head back to the lab to install our new transmission housing. With our electric screwdriver in hand, the transmission case stood no chance. Made quick work and removed it from the car. The objective here was simple: start disassembling the transmission piece by piece until we could get all of the gears out and transplant them into the new case. Notice here I have switched back from the CLSD and gone back to the gear diff that comes stock in the Redcat. This move was purely made from a testing standpoint and not due to a lack of performance from the CLSD. Upon inspecting all of the gears, everything looked great, so I was ready to transplant into the new case. But not before I switched the diff yet again, and this time opted for a Yokomo ball diff to see if we could gain any more performance from this rear end. While I had the rear end disassembled, I also opted to change out the factory toe block for these Yokomo toe blocks. The factory pins are just a little bit longer, which didn't allow the toe block to sit flush in the mounting hole. But after just a couple seconds of grind time on the Dremel and some finish work with a file, I was able to size the pins down and everything fit like a glove. Not only did these toe blocks look impressive, they're also going to allow us to add some more toe into the car, and they'll allow us to make easier roll center adjustment changes in the back end because they have helped improve the positioning of the hinges. And now story time. Here's a funny story about how I built the transmission incorrectly. I ended up using the two shafts that were supposed to be the connection points inside of the idler gears, so once corrected, this would be how the transmission should look. I would like to note that I did have to make irreversible modifications to the new transmission case to get it to clear the Yokomo toe blocks, an unfortunate side effect of chasing performance. Well, it lasted 15 whole months, but I finally fell victim to the fragile servo horn. But rather than just slap on the Redcat aluminum horn, I opted to really put our chassis to the test. Could we squeeze a Yokomo front end? With my electric screwdriver in hand, I began disassembling the chassis. Unfortunately, the top brace didn't fit just right with the stock plastic upper support, but after some measuring, I realized that I could flip the deck to the top side of the support and it would fit. With everything sorted on the top deck, the rest of the front end components slid right into place. Running the high battery is one option of the chassis, but here you can see one of our locals, Jeff, who opted to use the standoffs to replace the middle brace and run a lower battery configuration in his chassis, and it also rips. Jeff, thanks for all the support. Appreciate you building the chassis and shredding doors with me, giving me feedback on what's working. Jeff also was running the same Rhino Racing Shark DDSS front end as I was, with a slightly different configuration of arms and whatnot. but man, did it look nice in the car. Those little bits of red really added to tying this whole chassis all together. And really, this was the last thing left to make this thing decked out head to toe and adjustable beyond any limit that I will ever be able to drive it to. A couple bits of feedback on this front end that I would like to give people is, if you do intend to use this, plan to get yourself the upper arms that are made for this front end as well as the knuckles. That will save you a lot of headaches as far as setting up this front end and dialing in all of the geometry. After about 3.5 painstaking hours of changing and adjusting and tightening and loosening, I had something that resembled a front end geometry that I figured could and should work, but only some track time would tell the truth. Here you can see I used some MST RMX knuckles, and that was the only thing I could do to salvage the front end geometry. The stock Redcat knuckles were definitely not cutting it. But when it came time to give it the aerial view, it looked pretty impressive. And nothing showcases that forged carbon better than my dirty stovetop. And nothing showcased some of our changes better than setting it side by side with a completely stock swap. Look at that wheelbase and track width difference.
You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's
With the Matsuri just a week away, it was time to make sure that there was no bugs in the car. Let's hope for the best. Now, the Shark front end has some other added benefits, including pushing some more front weight over the front end of the chassis, which should help aid in building front grip. The visual aesthetic was great too. I love how hopped up the car looks now. Pop in the lid, people aren't expecting it to be a Redcat, and they're really shocked when they see the Yokomo front end components on it, as well as seeing it perform on track. The proof is definitely in the laps, and this car definitely gets it. Until next time.